Hello there, and welcome to the Outside Views weekly magazine on European politics. 2 weeks after the ultra-right government took office, the first major conflicts between the anti-immigrant right-wing coalition in Italy and international sea rescuers escalated in some cases. Rome had asked the two organizations to leave Catania with their ships and some rescued people, but both refused. Around 30 of the 35 migrants on the German Humanity One went on hunger strikes, as confirmed by the organization SOS Humanity. The men told the crew that they had not eaten for 40 hours at that time and that the public should know. The situation on board had deteriorated. Applicable law is being trampled on, said Captain Joachim Ebeling. When I see that I have people on board who have the right to go ashore but are prevented from doing so by the authorities, I just get angry. He stressed that he would not move the ship until all migrants were ashore. The crew was trying to encourage the 35 men and to take away the fear that they could be taken to Libya, where they had started their crossing in boats. And that's what the captain told the German press agency that time. Many said they would rather drown than have to go back to a civil war land. The organization SOS Humanity has already taken legal action. At a court in Catania, urgent asylum applications were made for the 35 migrants. A lawyer also filed a complaint with the administrative court in Rome against a decree by the Ministry of the Interior of Italy's new right-wing government. The decree stipulates that the Humanity One must leave Italian waters and take with it all migrants who are not in an emergency situation. The Geo Barents was moored a few meters from the German ship. Help, that's what the people there wrote on cardboard signs. 3 men jumped into the docks to swim ashore on Monday. 2 then refused to return to the ship. They therefore spent the night in a van on the pier and waited for good news, which finally came in the evening. A 4th ship, the Ocean Viking, made its way to France with 234 migrants on board because after waiting for days, Rome had not answered the request for port in Sicily. The organization SOS Méditerranée spoke of a critical and dramatic failure of all European countries. Some of the rescued have been on the ship for more than 2 weeks. As on Monday, Brussels had again asked Italy to let all those rescued ashore. A spokeswoman for the EU Commission emphasized that, under EU law, migrants must have access to the asylum procedure in Italy. There is a clear legal framework for that. Rome's actions did not come as a surprise, though. The right-wing parties had already announced during the election campaign that they wanted to stop boat migrants. Interior Minister Matteo Piantedosi recently described the people who have to stay on the boat as the remaining cargo that would leave the port. He was sharply criticized for this by the opposition and, of course, aid organizations. In 2019, Piantedosi was head of the Interior Ministry under Matteo Salvini of the right-wing populist Lega, who even then banned boats with refugees from entering Italian ports. Only a small proportion of the migrants come to Italy on NGO ships. As of Monday, the Ministry of the Interior in Rome counted more than 88,000 boat migrants who reached the country this year. Most of them make it into Italian waters with their own boats. After just 2 weeks in office, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has already lost his first cabinet member. On Tuesday evening, Secretary of State Gavin Williamson, who was sitting at the cabinet table without a portfolio, took his hat. That's a German expression for he's out. The Conservative MP had come under pressure in the past few days because of various allegations of bullying. Sunak expressed confidence in Williamson recently, but described his choice of words to a party friend in text messages that has become public as unacceptable. However, he emphasized that he wanted to wait for the results of an internal investigation. After further allegations were made on Tuesday, Williamson took the consequences himself. I reject the statements in these allegations, but I recognize that they distract from the good work this government is doing for the British people. That's what Williamson wrote in his resignation letter, and so he's not only a bully but also delusional, talking about good work. Williamson's resignation is likely to raise doubts as to whether Sunak is in a position to steer his Conservative governing party, which has recently been completely divided and sinking into chaos instead of calmer waters. He had taken over the post just 2 weeks ago from Liz Truss, who was forced to resign by her own faction after just 45 days in office. Truss only succeeded Boris Johnson, who had been ousted due to numerous scandals at the beginning of September. Sweden's new Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson met Erdogan in Turkey for the first time. The country still did not give the green light for joining NATO. So, Turkey still does not pave the way for Sweden and Finland to join NATO. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Tuesday, after a first meeting with the new Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson in Ankara, that he hopes to make more progress at the next Swedish-Finnish-Turkish meeting in Stockholm at the end of November. Sweden wants to join NATO for its own security. It is only right if it does everything to help Turkey with its security, they say. Kristersson said his country would fully comply with the memorandum signed at the end of June, including on the fight against terrorism. Sweden will honor all the commitments it made to Turkey to counter the terrorist threat, both prior to NATO membership and as a future ally. That's what he said at a press conference alongside Erdogan. In response to the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, Sweden and Finland applied for NATO membership in mid-May. So far, the two northernmost states of the EU have been close partners in the defense alliance, but not full members who could count on NATO help in the event of an attack. For the period of the accession process, however, the two countries have been given security guarantees by several parties. In general, the two countries have received plenty of tailwind from NATO. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg repeatedly campaigned for northern expansion, and 28 of the 30 members have already ratified the Swedish and Finnish proposals. Only Turkey and Hungary are still missing. In Northern Europe, it's expected that Hungary will be ready with ratification in December, and that this should not be subject to any conditions. With Turkey, on the other hand, things remain difficult. They are concerned with arms exports and above all with alleged Swedish and Finnish support for the Syrian Kurdish militia YPG, which Turkey sees as an offshoot of the banned Kurdish Workers' Party PKK and thus as a terrorist organization, as they put it. The EU, which includes Sweden and Finland, also regards the PKK as a terrorist organization, but not the YPG and its political arm, the PYD. Kristersson emphasized that Sweden regards the PKK as a terrorist organization. Sweden understands that Turkey has been involved in a long and bloody fight against PKK terrorism, he said. We know that Turkey is one of the NATO allies that has been hit hardest by terrorism, he said. Such messages are not enough for Turkey, though. There are positive developments, but there are still many steps to be taken, according to the Turkish parliament speaker Mustafa Sentop. And that's according to the state news agency Anadolu, after his own meeting with Kristersson. For example, there was no progress on the extradition request. At the end of June, the dispute seemed to be settled with an agreement between the three countries at the NATO summit in Madrid. However, Turkey continues to complain that agreements made at the time have not yet been fulfilled, especially by Sweden, including the extradition of more than 70 people. Observers also suspect other intentions behind the Turkish blockade, such as concessions from the United States of America with regard to fighter jet deliveries. According to surveys, Erdogan's approval among the population also increased after the announced NATO blockade, and elections are to be held in Turkey in June 2023. Sweden had recently made a clear move towards Ankara, approved the export of war material to the NATO member for the first time since 2019, and distanced themselves from the YPG and the PYD. On Monday evening, the Swedish government also announced that it wanted to support a voluntary NATO contribution fund to combat terrorism with 10 million Swedish crowns, that's around 920,000 euros. The purpose of this was to strengthen NATO's role in the international fight against terrorism. That's what the Defense Ministry said in Stockholm. The accusations are massive. Did Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis have several ministers in his government spied on? He himself speaks of an unbelievable lie. Well, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has denied the report that he had several ministers in his own government bugged. This is an unbelievable lie, as I said, he told some media. And the newspaper Documento, which is close to the opposition, had previously reported that the mobile phones of 33 people had been tapped by the secret services, including other confidants of the head of government, as well as entrepreneurs and journalists. The EYP Secret Service reports directly to the Prime Minister. According to the media report, the foreign and labor ministers were among the targets of the spying. Mitsotakis called the allegations defamatory. He accused the leader of the left-wing opposition party Syriza, the ex-Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, of being behind the article. The allegations would be investigated and cleared up. Mitsotakis expressed the assumption that it could be eavesdropping software that had been used by private individuals. The Supreme Court in Athens has already ordered an investigation into those allegations. The wiretapping scandal started in August. At that time, the leader of the Social Democratic Party PASOK, Nikos Androulakis, filed a complaint against an unknown person on suspicion that his mobile phone was being tapped. The investigation revealed that the mobile phone had actually been tapped by the Secret Service for months. The revelations cost the president of the Secret Service his office. The Polish Conservative Party leader Jarosław Kaczyński has caused a scandal with statements about women's drinking habits. He blames them for the low birth rate. So the leader of the Polish ruling party, Jarosław Kaczyński, has caused outrage with statements about alcohol consumption by women. The head of the right-wing populist PiS blamed alleged excessive drinking by young women for the low birth rate in Poland. For these statements, he was sharply criticized by opposition politicians. If young women continue to drink as much as men of the same age by the age of 25, then there will be no children. That's what the 73-year-old bachelor said on Saturday. It takes a man on average 20 years of heavy drinking to become an alcoholic, a woman only 2. And Kaczynski really said this based on his claims from a doctor who was able to cure a third of his male alcoholic patients, but no women. By the way, you can't cure them. The left-wing MP Johanna Scheurig-Wilgus dismissed Kaczynski's comments as nonsense and called him a patriarchal old geezer. The Liberal MP Katarzyna Lubinauer described the statements by the former head of government as nonsense that offends women. According to official statistics, the current birth rate in Poland is around 1.3 children per woman, and that's below EU average. Critics argue that women in Poland are reluctant to have children for financial reasons and because of restrictive abortion laws. In October 2020, Poland's Supreme Court, with the support of the National Conservative government, declared the abortion of severely malformed fetuses to be unconstitutional and thus further tightened the already strict requirements. Kaczynski has been widely regarded as the man who has effectively ruled Poland since his PiS first victory in the 2015 general election, even though he resigned as prime minister in June. It is expected that his departure from the government will not change any of that. EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton has threatened the United States with going to the World Trade Organization, the WTO, because of its anti-inflation program. Breton told French broadcaster BFM Business that the US requirements threatened free world trade. And German Federal Finance Minister Christian Lindner from the Liberals, on the other hand, spoke out in favor of dialogue with Washington. We have to make sure that there is no trade conflict that would only produce losers, he warned. Lindner said on the sidelines of a meeting of the Euro countries in Brussels that the federal government, like the EU Commission, is concerned that European companies and industries could also be negatively affected by decisions of the United States. However, the EU and the US should talk to each other and not fall into the logic of, it's like you are good to me. Otherwise, there is a risk of a trade war. And that is something we really don't need at the moment. But Breton warned that if Washington didn't respond to Brussels' concerns, the EU could go to the WTO. The EU Commission had already criticized at the end of October that the United States law against high inflation threatened a number of EU industrial sectors, such as manufacturers of cars, batteries, or green energy companies. Among other things, the government of US President Joe Biden provides tax credits for companies that produce in the USA. For example, a $7,500 bonus is provided for every US citizen who purchase a US-made electric vehicle with a US-made battery. And the electric car manufacturer Tesla then announced that it would reconsider its plans to build a battery factory in Grünheide in Brandenburg in Germany. Economics Minister Robert Habeck from the German government then advocated a strong response at European level. The US program must not destroy the fair competitive conditions between the United States and the EU. That's what Habeck said in mid-October after consultations with France's economics minister Bruno Le Maire in Berlin. In Brussels, Le Maire also called for a strong response from the EU Commission. He accuses the United States of fomenting a subsidy race, as he said in an interview with the German newspaper Handelsblatt and other European newspapers. To resolve the disagreements, the EU and the US have set up a working group. Despite this, Lindner said the United States had not yet realized the magnitude of our concerns about the consequences. A few days before the planned peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Washington, both sides accused each other of new provocations at the border. The Armenian Defense Ministry announced on Monday that Azerbaijani units opened fire on the eastern part of the border during the night. There weren't any victims, though. The Azerbaijani Defense Ministry spoke of small arms attacks by the Armenian units. Baku also claimed no casualties. Foreign ministers of Armenia, Ararat Mirzoyan, and Azerbaijan, Jeroen Bayramov, are scheduled to meet US Secretary of Defense Antony Blinken on Sunday. Azerbaijan had attacked its neighboring country on September 13th. In recent years, there have been repeated armed conflicts between the two states, with Nagorno-Karabakh at the center. In 1990, this region, which is mostly inhabited by Armenians, seceded from Azerbaijan. After a war with Azerbaijan, Armenia lost control of much of the territory in 2020. In September, however, the fighting did not take place in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan attacked Armenian territory for the very first time. Observers therefore spoke of a new dimension there. 286 people were killed in fighting in September. They could only be stopped under great pressure from the United Nations, the EU, and some other actors. Diplomats believe that Azerbaijan's authoritarian leadership took advantage of Russia's preoccupation with the war against Ukraine. After the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, Russia is leading a peacekeeping mission in the region. A ceasefire is currently in place, but it appears to be fragile. In addition to the United States, Russia is also currently trying to negotiate in this conflict. However, a summit meeting last week made little progress towards a solution. Russian President Vladimir Putin on October 31st met Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani leader Ilham Aliyev. A peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan is necessary, said the three top politicians. The Russian government say they are ready to support the way there. However, there were no concrete proposals as to what a peace solution for the two states and for the Armenians in the Azerbaijani region of Nagorno-Karabakh could look like. Nagorno-Karabakh was not even mentioned in the paper. In a joint statement, however, it was agreed to refrain from using threats and violence when resolving conflicts. Both states accepted state sovereignty and the borders of the other country, it said. Russia has traditionally been Armenia's protecting power in the South Caucasus, but also oversaw the 2020 ceasefire agreements for both sides. Azerbaijan is backed by Turkey. He is 27 years old and is considered Marine Le Pen's foster son. Jordan Bardella has now replaced her as the party leader of the right-wing Rassemblement National. He has practiced martial arts for years and a pair of boxing gloves adorns his office. And now Jordan Bardella has made it to the top of the Rassemblement National, or RN, replacing Marine Le Pen. France's right-wing populist to right-wing extremist party elected the previous interim leader as the new party leader. And there are signs that Bardella feels called to something even greater, such as the next presidential election in 2027. I belong to the generation that will govern. The only question is when it will be. That's what he said recently. The foster son of RN boss Le Pen received 85% of the vote in an online vote, as Le Pen announced at the party conference in Paris on Saturday. The 27-year-old prevailed against his competitor Louis Alliot. Only 15% of party members voted for the mayor of Perpignan. This is the first time that the RN has not been managed by a member of the Le Pen family since it was founded. However, Bardella belongs to the Le Pen clan. He has been in a relationship with the granddaughter of Jean-Marie Le Pen for several years, and in the event of marriage, Marine Le Pen would become his aunt by marriage. When Marine Le Pen stepped down from the party leadership last year to focus on the presidential campaign, she let Bardella take the reins. The internal election was considered a mere, formality. Bardella grew up in a council estate in a Parisian suburb. His family has Italian roots. When he was 10 years old, he watched the riots in the suburbs. He later did an internship at a police station. Life in a suburb is a good school, he once said. At 16, he joined what was then known as the Front National. He was impressed by Marine Le Pen, who had taken over the leadership of the party from her father Jean-Marie Le Pen a few months earlier. She says what others don't dare to say. I like her character, her energy, her courage. That's what Bardella says of Le Pen. Le Pen soon became aware of the politically gifted young man and made him her crown prince. Observers believe that this was also a means of keeping her ambitious niece Marion Maréchal at bay, who is repeatedly said to have ambitions to return to politics. Bardella did political drudgery and made the political talk shows. He regularly got up at 5 a.m. to defend the party line on the morning programs. In 2019, he ran as the leading candidate of the Rassemblement National for the European elections. His list came first nationwide with 23%. Bardella became the youngest MEP ever at the age of 23. Publicly, Bardella avoids offending with extreme views, but he does occasionally hint that he is taking a harder line than Le Pen, who has been trying for years to move the party closer to the center of politics, at least officially. He commented positively on the conspiracy theory of the Great Exchange, according to which migrant Muslims in France are gradually becoming the majority of the population. I don't use the term, but I recognize that it describes a reality, he says. The change at the top of the party was overshadowed by the recent scandal in the National Assembly triggered by an RN MP. A racist heckling during a black MP speech earned Grégoire de Fournat a 2-week ban. When the paint comes off, the true face of the iron appears. That's racism. The poison of right-wing extremism is still hidden under the tie. That was said by Socialist Party leader Olivier Faure indignantly. He alluded to Le Pen's suggestion that male MPs dress formally and adopt a moderate demeanor. The party should show itself to be capable of governing. But this has been thoroughly gambled away in public opinion for the time being. Badea wears a tie too. His young face and his gelled short haircut make him appear smooth and true to the lines. But the boxing gloves in his office may be a sign that he has some plans of his own. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.